If you had to choose between opening up a store where you worked at the scheduled time or going to a client's house to secure a $15,000 deal for your boss, which would you choose? When he was 23, Mark Cuban faced that very decision. He chose the deal over the store. While the choice seemed right to him, it got him fired. More about that later. To understand the man behind such bold decisions, we have to go back to when Mark Cuban was just 12 years old and sold garbage bags door to door in a suburb of Pittsburgh. He later sold powdered milk, which wasn't much of a step up. He recalled in his book, How to Win at the Sport of Business, in every job, I would justify it in my mind, whether I loved it or hated it, that I was getting paid to learn. And every experience would be of value when I figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. He figured out very quickly that he wanted to run his own business, and boy, has he been successful. From co-founding Broadcast.com, a pioneer in online broadcasting, to owning the Dallas Mavericks, to his iconic role on Shark Tank.
If I offered you $30 million for the company, would you take it?
Mark Cuban is worth $5.2 billion. Yet even he grappled with self-doubt when he started out, admitting, in reality, I had as much doubt as confidence. I was just hoping the confidence would win over the doubt and it would all work out for the best. After graduating from Indiana University in the early 80s, he looked for a job where he could learn more about computers. The personal computing industry was starting to take off. He took a job at Mellon Bank in his hometown of Pittsburgh, where he took old manual systems at small banks and converted them to automated systems. He didn't last long there, all of 9 months. His next stint trying to franchise the TV repair business lasted 8 months. Then, at the age of 23, he took off to Dallas, Texas, where in his words, he pursued fun, sun, money, and women. He crashed at a friend's apartment, sleeping on the couch or the floor, lived off bar food, and bartended at night while hunting for a job in the computer industry by day. He managed to convince a store to hire him to sell software despite his lack of experience. When interviewers asked, "What do you do if a customer has a question about a software package and you don't know the answer?" he responded, "I would look it up in the manual and find the answer for them." Not only was that a good answer, but that's actually what he did. He'd spend every night reading computer manuals to learn everything he could about the products he was selling. He felt this would give him an edge over others, and he believes his passion for learning is one of the main reasons he's so successful. Clearly it worked because customers were so impressed with his knowledge that they hired him to install software at their offices. He charged $25 an hour for consulting, split between him and the store, and the extra cash allowed him to move into an apartment with his own bedroom. Cuban realized he loved working with technology, but he hated having a boss. 9 months into his new job, a client asked him to come into the office to close a $15,000 deal. The problem was the client wanted him to come at the same time he was expected to open up the software store at 9 a.m. He chose to close the sale rather than open up shop. Cuban recalled, "We all have to make that make or break call to follow orders or do what you know is right. I followed my first instinct, close the sale." He got a coworker to open up the shop instead. However, his boss wasn't impressed and fired him. While most people would have been crushed by the firing, Cuban had a different perspective. He thought, it never really matters how many times you fail. You only have to be right once. Getting fired was a blessing in disguise. It ignited his drive to start his own company. He created Micro Solutions, Inc., which sold personal computers and software and helped companies and individuals install them. He called up all the clients he had worked with at the shop, informing them he was now on his own, and sought their business. They were hesitant to hire him since he didn't have employees or even a company phone. So Cuban's initial approach focused on building trust. When he tried to convince one company to buy an accounting software he was selling, he said he'd install it for free and offered to refund 100% of their money if the software didn't work for them. They just need to pay the $500 it took for Cuban to buy the software from the publisher. And in exchange, he could use them as a reference. Cuban wasn't going to make any money on the sale. He was investing in building a client base and reputation, which put him in a better position to negotiate future deals. He got along so well with another client that its CEO, Martin Woodall, ended up becoming a partner in his business, Micro Solutions. They were the perfect match. Woodall was detail-oriented and anal, as Cuban described him, whereas Cuban was disorganized and not a details person. Cuban understood that success in business isn't just about individual talent, but also about surrounding yourself with the right people who fill in the gaps in your own abilities. Or in his words, don't lie to yourself. Each of us has to face the reality of who we are and what we are. They even weathered a major financial scam when their secretary stole nearly all of the company's money. Cuban says she whited out the names of the checks he wrote to vendors and altered them to her own name, sending $83,000 of the company's $85,000 to herself. While most people would have freaked out with a capital F, he didn't because he thought it a waste of energy. And the hard lesson he learned was that no one was going to cover my obligations but me. He returned to work, put his head down, and searched for new ideas, reading every book related to computers that he could get his hands on, learning about the features that worked well and the bugs in the software. He still reads for 3 hours every day. After 7 years, he sold MicroSolutions in 1990 to CompuServe, a subsidiary of H&R Block, for $6 million. He took the money and started trading tech stocks at a time when they were soaring. It was during this time that he identified a gap in the digital world that would change his life. While hanging out with his college buddy Todd Wagner, they whined about the fact that they couldn't listen to the basketball games from Indiana University while living in Texas. So they decided to launch the audio streaming service AudioNet with just $8,000. Initially, AudioNet focused on broadcasting college sports. Then it went from audio to video, and this was a decade before YouTube. AudioNet eventually became Broadcast.com. They recognized the potential of the platform beyond sports to broadcast anything over the internet, including shareholder meetings and earnings calls. The idea was to reach people during the day when they were in the office. Yahoo ended up purchasing Broadcast.com in 1999 for a whopping $5.7 billion in stock. However, Yahoo would end up regretting the sale. It shut down much of its broadcast services, and Broadcast.com was eventually discontinued. In hindsight, it's been called one of the worst internet acquisitions of all time. For Mark Cuban, it catapulted him into the billionaires club. The first thing he did was buy a plane. The asset he values most is time, and his Gulfstream 5 business jet brought him more of it. He didn't even see it in person when he bought it online for $40 million, setting a Guinness World Record for the largest online purchase at the time. The Gulfstream was just the beginning. The iconic purchase he's most known for was in 2000, when the die-hard basketball fan bought the Dallas Mavericks for $285 million.
What the fuck is that team worth now?
$2.5 billion?
God damn!
Cuban brought a fresh approach to NBA team ownership. He ditched the box seats billionaire owners were accustomed to and sat behind the bench, notoriously yelling at the refs. This hands-on approach also changed the team's atmosphere, and the Mavericks won their first NBA championship in 2011. For Cuban, business is more intense than any sport. With sports, you know how long the game will last, usually. In business, competition is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. He once quipped, "If your girlfriend asks you which is more important, them or your business, you give the right answer." He's so fired up about competition that after becoming filthy rich, he didn't rest on his laurels. Cuban launched the high-definition television network HDNet. He co-founded the entertainment company 2929 Entertainment. And in 2022, he launched a drug company that promises steep discounts on hundreds of prescription drugs to tackle the high price of drugs in the US. These days, instead of working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, he's cut back to a mere 18 hours a day to spend precious time with his family. He met his wife Tiffany at a gym in Dallas in 1997. They have 3 children and live in a chateau-style home larger than 5 basketball courts. When he was young, he'd drive by big houses like his every weekend and wonder who lived there. What do they do for a living? How do they manage to afford a place like that? The next time you pass by a sprawling estate like Mark Cuban used to, remember that countless hours, failures, blood, sweat, and tears likely paved the way to that doorstep. Self-education was pivotal in Cuban's journey, proving that with the right resources, anyone can master complex subjects. And there's a free and easy way to learn. Brilliant is a website and app where you can learn math, computer science, and data science interactively. Instead of learning in a stale classroom environment, you can learn intuitively by working your way through their puzzles. I like to spend 10 minutes a day solving Brilliant's logic puzzles to improve my analytical thinking. You can start at your own comfort level and then progress to more advanced lessons. And if you get stuck, you can view the explanation to discover the correct approach. You can try out Brilliant for free for 30 days using my link in the description, brilliant.org/newsthing. If you're one of the first 200 people to sign up with my link, you'll get 20% off your premium subscription, unlocking all of Brilliant's courses. Thanks for watching. For Newsthink, I'm Cindy Palm.